Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having us. My name is Rehema Maria Kimulu, and I am a climate policy professional. And with me here, I have wonderful guests from the Natural Justice Organization, and we'll go step by step to introduce each other.
Thank you, Rehema, for hosting me this afternoon. My name is Elias Odhiambo. I'm the chairperson, Center for Moot and Research Africa, CMR Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, hi Rehema. Lovely to be here. My name is Nyagodie Chege. I am the director of the East Africa Hub of Natural Justice.
Pleasure to have you.
Hi Rehema, my name is Dale Onyango, and I'm a program officer at Natural Justice.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. You're most welcome. And we will go straight to the most recent event you had, the most recent Moot Court competition that took place recently. Would you please speak into that? What has been the impact since? What has been the excitement since? And what drives you to keep conducting these Moot Courts? Let me start with you, Nyagodie.
So Rehema, I was actually going to suggest that we ask Dale to do it because he was actually the lead for us in terms of pulling this Moot Court together. But I'll say a little bit about it. This is our second annual Environmental Justice Moot Court. And we are thrilled to have worked with our partners CMR and Riara University again this year. And we had law students from around the country. It was even, the turnout was even greater this year than last year. Representation from almost entirely every law school in the country was present, and it was great to have also close to 35, I think, or 40 judges, our quote-unquote judges who are volunteer judges who helped us as well with the Moot Court. But Dale can give us a lot more detail about it, and particularly I think what was so exciting is the question that the students had to tackle in their trials.
Great, thank you so much for those highlights. Dale, please go ahead and speak into this.
Thank you. So as Nyagudi has mentioned, this is the second edition of the Environmental and Climate Justice Moot. So just to give you a brief background, we had the first edition last year on the 28th of October, and the turnout was great. And the feedback that we got is that we should have this as an annual event. So on Natural Justice's side, when we decided to have the Moot Court competition, we thought it's a very good avenue for students to come in, explore creative arguments. You realize that they can also help us with the sort of arguments they come up with when they're tackling the contemporary issues in the form of a moot question. So after our success in the first year, we decided that why not have a second round? So the second round is what we had on the 9th, from the 9th of November to the 11th of November. And as our director has said, we had a huge turnout. I think all but 2 universities attended. So the total number of participants were around 89 students. And we introduced a different thing. So in the initial, which I'll call the inaugural moot, we only had the mooters. So for mooting, I'll actually equate it to litigation. However, during the planning session, we realized that we can as well open it up to students who might not as well be good at mooting, but then can do some research. So this year's competition was twofold. So on one end, we had the moot competition going on, while on the other end, we had researchers again from different universities presenting on a paper. So the researchers are also expected to write a 2,000-word paper. So these 2 events were running side by side, and I know the Moot overshadowed the research competition. So I think going forward, we'll also just highlight more about research, but I'll leave it at that. These are 2 events, and they really went well.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. So you had mentioned earlier that beyond introducing ourselves, we can also speak more about our organization, your organizations, and what you focus on, etc. Pardon my mistake, but do you mind if we go ahead to discuss about what you do in your individual organizations, and thereafter I'll come back to asking you more additional questions towards the moot court. I hope that's okay with all of us.
That's great.
Great. Okay. Please go ahead, Elias.
Thank you, Rema. Just to take it up from where Dale has left, especially on our participation during the natural justice environmental moot court competition. First, on our part as CMR Africa, we would want to commend the Natural Justice for organizing the moot court competition, then coming in as a partner, especially noting that we have symbiotic objectives and mission of impacting students on real societal issues like concerning environment and so on and so forth. Our participation was quite instrumental, noting that based on our engagements and the memoranda with the judiciary, we were able to bring on board judges who could, an ELC judge who could preside on the finals. That was a very important aspect of the moot, noting that students for the first time, even despite not going to Kenya School of Law or even becoming advocates of High Court, they were given an opportunity to speak before a judge, and that was quite instrumental for both their oratory skills and even to build the confidence. And then most important is giving these students an avenue to get the market experience and even leverage on mentors that were available. And the Natural Justice is a potential employer to most environmental enthusiasts that were involved in the moot court competition. So the moot court competition organized by Natural Justice brought in the light that is required to these young enthusiasts on environmental law. And we thank and commend Natural Justice for organizing the moot, and going forward we encourage them to continue organizing such competitions for the student. So as a partner, we were very grateful to be involved, and we look forward for further and future engagement.
Nyakodie, do you mind speaking more into this? What can you share in terms of the collaborative approach towards coming up with successful moot court competitions? Because in the past, when someone hears about your moot court competitions involving students who have not graduated yet, there's probably maybe not that much of an impetus. So what was this drive? What took you there?
Yeah, so it's interesting, I think, for all of us, and we've all been educated different times, different generations, and also in different law schools. But one of the key things that ties law education around the world is the moot court experience, yeah? Because it is seen as an integral and very core opportunity for law students to learn how to be lawyers. So the questions that they tackle in a moot court would be very similar to issues that are actually very current. Most of the time, a really good moot question, and Dale will speak a little bit more about that, reflects the current issues that have not been resolved legally, like the jurisprudence hasn't been settled. And so with all of us, in each of our different times of education, we went through a moot experience of one kind or another. And that has really grown as well in Kenya. What I think is different for us and what we find very unique, and we saw a gap, was the issue of environmental law, and particularly what is of interest to natural justice is environmental justice law. Because for us, we are very interested in the human rights linked relationship between law and the rights of communities to be able to protect their environment, right? And the issues that so many of us are facing, and particularly the most marginalized communities in our country, are those people who face the greatest impacts, for example, from climate change, the impacts of climate change, or biodiversity loss. And yet our jurisprudence is only now developing in order to be able to respond to some of the key, very new and emerging issues that are facing us in Kenya. So for natural justice, it was absolutely key to be able to provide this opportunity because, as Elias said, we are an employer of lawyers and of researchers, and it's really important that we have our lawyers understand the issues that are facing our clients. Our clients are these marginalized communities, as well as to be able to impact the development of the law, both through the cases and litigation that we ourselves bring in courts, but as well as the development in law and policy. And so really important that we have both internally within natural justice and amongst our peer organizations and partner organizations the capacity to be able to answer some of these really burning questions.
I mean, this is very exciting, and to learn that the fact that these are emerging issues that oftentimes they even catch us off guard, and there is no curriculum that is a copy-paste perfection of how best to deal with this, and I must commend you for that step. And so going back to Dale, I'm curious. So you actually answered some of the questions that are already going through my head as you were explaining about what has been going on with the Moot Court, etc. I just want to know what happens with the kind of research the students were carrying out. Do they go ahead to publish in collaboration with the judges that were present? Are they also taught on how to sort of like jot down their work? How does that build up in the end? Does that contribute maybe to their research in their institutions? Do the representative institutions appreciate your input into this capacity building? And also, are they housed in one place? Is it like a boot camp, or do they need to go back and out? I think there are students listening to this and they'll really like to hear about the fun bit of it.
Thank you very much for that. So, like I mentioned, the research component is fairly new. So they had more or less the same experience as the Mooters. So we invited them to come to Nairobi. We had them in one of the hotels because we realized that most of the law schools currently are outside Nairobi. And since this is a 3-day event, we thought it better to actually have them. And also, this is not just a forum where they present their papers, it's also a networking opportunity for them. So while they stay together, while they mingle within the law school, they can be able to share ideas. So in terms of the research piece, we, together with Riara University, decided to come up with a special issue. So Riara Law School has a journal whereby they publish some of the research papers. So we were in discussions with them to fund a special issue specifically for this second edition of the Environmental Justice Moot. So we are trying to sieve through the different research papers, categorize them, because there are 4 different categories. So we can be able to look through the different categories, choose the best pieces, then publish that in the Riara Law Journal.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, our gratitude go to Riara University. That's far. So my follow-up question to natural justice is it's probably a rhetoric, but do you mind speaking more into why you are so invested in these activities vis-a-vis the initiative you already have with the Moot Court competition? Is it something that you want to scale further across Sub-Sahara? Are you still taking time so that you can utilize the impact for you to obtain a buy-in in these other areas? Where would you like to showcase this initiative?
so this is the exciting part, right? So a little bit, let me tell you a little bit more about natural justice so you can see why this is something that is so important for us, and not just for us here in Kenya. So we're a Pan-African organization. We call ourselves Lawyers for Communities in the Environment. And we started in South Africa just over 10 years ago, and now are operating in 10 countries across the continent. And have headquarters in West Africa, in Dakar. Nairobi is our headquarters for East Africa, and Cape Town is the head office for Southern Africa. So even though the environmental justice moot court is something that was piloted here in Kenya, and we have, as we were saying, have had it now for 2 years, this is of great interest to our partners, not just our colleagues within natural justice who are now operating and working and supporting communities in different countries across the continent, but as well as the partners that we work with. The area of environmental justice, and we're talking about both giving legal advice and litigation, and climate justice in particular. Climate litigation is extremely new. It's a very new area for us, as we were saying earlier. And as we know, it is an extremely important area for us to, for lack of a better term, for us to get it right, yeah? Because we really don't have much time. And we don't have much room in terms of being able to experiment in trying to find the right solutions. And also because of the justice question, making sure that those who have caused the problem are the ones who pay for it, as opposed to those who had almost nothing to do with the creation of this crisis, this dual crisis of climate change, impacts and biodiversity loss, really are feeling the impacts. So how is it that we make sure that across the continent we're able to develop an understanding of what the issues are and find solutions? And for us as lawyers, and the three of us here lawyers, for us, our platform, our modality is using the law and being able to support communities to understand the law, to know it, to use it, and as importantly, to be able to shape it, so that through the cases that come through the courts, through the influence they have to shape the development of policy and regulations through the parliamentary systems, like for us in Kenya, this is a really important entry point and a way that we support communities as natural justice across all our offices to be able to really influence the way this is going. So for natural justice, this is not a one-off event. We are very committed and delighted with our partners CMR and Riara University that we have committed to carrying this on here. But for natural justice, it is beyond just an East Africa hub, a Kenya thing. We're really thinking about how to be able to roll it out. And I mean, great ambition says to have an African environmental justice moot court with students coming from across the continent, similar to so many of the other moot courts that we go to, right? There's Jessup that happens in Washington, D.C. every year. And so to be able to have that kind of ambition and that dream is something that we have, and we're delighted that we have partners as well who are ready to work with us to make that dream come true.
Wow, that's fantastic. I mean, just off the cuff, part of the challenges I've had in the past, or rather part of the challenges I've had other policymakers make in the past, is that when it comes to the global south, that capacity is normally lacking, especially when they go to these negotiation events like the ongoing COP28 events. And this is a very timely initiative. So I'm sure the students listening into this can be able to correlate with the amount of work that is way ahead of them vis-a-vis the opportunities that lie in the future. So building on the last point on opportunities, back to you, Elias. How best would you say will be from your learning experience, or rather from the interactions you had during the moot court competition. What would you say would be the building blocks from those interactions with the students, their interactions with the guest judges that were there, etc.?
Thank you, Rehema. That's an interesting question, considering that I was also a mooter and a researcher when I was a student. And then that formed the basis why we formed the Center of Moots and Research Africa, CMR Africa. It's a non-profit organization founded by 6 young advocates, barely 1 year in practice. So we pride ourselves as a platform, Africa's platform, for social development of young lawyers to comment and also sensitize on emerging social and legal developments. We do it through 4 main hubs. We have a Moot Hub. We have a Moot Hub, that's where we conduct continuous moot court competitions touching on emerging social legal developments. Then we also have the Research Hub, where we conduct research competitions. We give students questions throughout the year. They participate in those competitions. They develop their research skills. We also have the Mentorship Hub, where we enroll mentors with mentees, and also we conduct mentorship talk series, where we bring established seniors like Senior Nyagudi here, where she talks to the students. And then we also have the Legal Aid Hub, where we bring the young advocates and established advocates we send them to various churches, get indigent litigants and take their matters on pro bono basis. So what opportunities are we providing to these students? In partnership with potential partners like Natural Justice, especially during the second moot court competitions, number one, we try to bridge the gap between the legal academy and the market. The legal profession as is slowly but surely becoming an employment engine, and the earlier you get in touch with your potential employer, the better. The Natural Justice Moot Court competition not only brought on board experts in environmental law, but also a judge of environmental and land court. These students get opportunity to interact directly with their potential mentors, directly with their potential employers. So that is a very good avenue that CMR Africa provides for these students. Like Senior said, we also have the regional vision. That's why we call ourselves as CMR Africa. That is the title of the organization. We intend to roll this thing across the board, whereas so far we have MOUs with 12 universities and even the Kenya Judiciary and the Law Society of Kenya. We intend to roll it throughout the region in the East Africa and also Africa at large, such that we'll be providing opportunities with mutual partners like Natural Justice through the activities. We bring on board students, we bring on board experts, and provide a bridge between the employment and the legal academy, such that when students get out of universities, they don't struggle as some of my peers. I'm not saying I didn't struggle. They don't struggle as much.
How long was that period? Struggle period?
Yes. So those are the opportunities we endeavor to provide to these students through CMR. Yes.
I mean, you are a powerhouse here. Those are like 6 hubs in one organization. When you mention hub, Nairobi is a tech hub, for example. I mean, what is your workforce? I mean, what inspired you to come together to work on this big dream as young lawyers?
Now, most of my directors were either my competitors while I was a student at university. So we met during moot court competitions. And the driving force was that in all these competitions, it was always the same faces. We were almost meeting always in different moot court competitions. And now we were supposed to agree on who is winning which competition. So realizing that moot court competition is an important pillar, like Senior said, for students, it was only attracting a clique of, let me say, deep state of moot court competition, for lack of better term. So we saw an opportunity or an avenue to provide multiple moot court competitions that can inform the student quite a number of students at the beginning of the year, so that we attract a large population to participate in this competition. So as at January, we should roll out a calendar of various moot court competition across the year. So that informs so many students to participate in different moot court competitions, so that we don't have the same case as it were with us, that only few individuals are the one always participating in the competition. And to facilitate that, we have 6 directors who saw the challenge and who saw the need to address that challenge. And then 2, they are always willing, like 2 of them have so far resigned, so that they can now have CMR as their only activity. So they have put it there all to ensure that at least they create a difference to the students. So it's upon the students, if they are watching, to look at our website. We are going to roll out a calendar, and in partnership with potential partners like Natural Justice, we'll have several moot court competitions, and it's upon them now to pick. If it is this one in September, I need to prepare as early as now, so that when it comes to September, it will not be the same faces that participated in natural environmental justice moot court competition last year. That is what actually we are trying to cure.
Is that across Sub-Sahara or just in Kenya
So
as a
far,
pilot?
so far, Kenya is our pilot program, because we are barely months doing this.
Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
You've mentioned earlier, so one of you has mentioned earlier about the fact that part of the main purposes of your moot court is to also orient the students with current issues, and that even justifies further why moot court is very integral in their training within their student years. So just to pick on that, Bill, could you probably give an example about what other real cases or interactions that the students had to engage with in the past 2 moot court competitions that you had? How significant has that been even to your work? Do the students appreciate the significance of why they need to address those issues at the community level, vis-a-vis maybe their peers who wish to go maybe into criminal law, and those are the kind of disciplines that probably look to be a lot more lucrative? I mean, what is the divide here?
Yes, thank you very much. I must mention there are very many types of moot court competition focusing on different areas. I know that those that focus on arbitration, that those that focus on commercial disputes. So as NJ, we saw that there was a lacuna, that there is no moot court that focuses solely on environment and climate. So, and that is why and how we came in. So ours is called Environment and Climate Justice Moot. So all our topics tie down to the bigger question, trying to sort of help in this field of environment and climate. So our first, that is inaugural Climate Justice Moot, focused solely on looking at the issuance of EIA licenses. So for the first one, we focused on a contemporary issue, which is one of the cases that we had done. So it was the Lamu Port case. So we gave the student a scenario whereby licenses were issued in a flawed manner. So they're able to sort of internalize and actually see that this is actually what is happening. So for us, we knew that this is something that we've dealt with. So we thought it better to give the student an opportunity to also sort of just see some of the issues that come in terms of the granting of license by the authority, which is NEMA. So that was the inaugural environmental justice competition. So for the second EJM Moot competition, we realized that something was happening, not just in Kenya, but across the world. In terms of climate. So there has been a lot of talks about the carbon markets, the carbon offset projects. So in our Moot problem, we thought it wise to bring in different things. And I think I mentioned it earlier, sometimes the aim of the Moot court competition is not just to solve, but just to spark the conversation. In the final question, the student might not need to tackle the issue, but then just have the knowledge that this is what is happening. So this year's theme was the rights of indigenous and local community to conserve and protect the environment versus the state's obligation to also protect and conserve the environment. So what really inspired this theme was the recent cases that have been happening. You've seen the eviction of the Ogiek from the Mao forest. There's also the imminent, impending eviction of Sengwer. Sengwer is also a forest dweller community. Across the border, you've seen the eviction of the Maasai from the Ngorongoro crater. And for Maasai, it's something that has been happening in Tanzania since 2012. There are even cases at the East African Court of Justice. So there is this wave of eviction of forest dwellers or indigenous and local community from their land by different governments, couched in the name of conservation of environment and biodiversity. But for us, we think there is more to it, you know. There is this need for the different governments to tap into the new thing, which is the carbon markets. So we are looking at it in terms of that. So those are some of the contemporary issues that we try and solve. They might not be ripe for litigation. That is what we call matters that are not yet ripe to be filed. So they're not ripe for litigation because even Kenya, it's up until recently that we are developing legislations regulating carbon markets. So things that might not be taken to court, we use the Moot as an avenue to ventilate these specific issues. So in a nutshell, we just try to see the contemporary issues, what is happening around, and whether we can incorporate those into the Moot competition, bring life to them, spark a conversation, and at least have people talking or that know something about it.
When I studied how the mangrove forests absorb a lot of carbon and the blue economy that is associated with them, the people there are central to the success of that whole project, courtesy of other organizations. To see, we don't need to mention them. It's not the question to me here is why is it that there is not that direct correlation to show how significant the role of these indigenous communities is in the mainstreaming and implementation of the government's objectives towards initializing or installing their carbon markets policies, building on the NDCs we've done in the past, your climate action plans. And I believe there must be CBOs or NGOs within those communities that have assisted them in the past. Are their efforts being overridden and all this? Are those some of the things that you're also having to deal with?
Yes, thank you. And allow me to mention that sometimes in the background, what we have is the different ideas of what conservation is. So in the global north, when they think about conservation of biodiversity and environment, they want or they tend to exclude the people, because I don't think they do have people living within forests and protected areas, because most of them are urban dwellers. But then if we come to the south, countries like Kenya and Africa, we have a lot of population who've lived within a specific ecosystem. So they are part of the ecosystem. They are part of the environment. So you cannot talk about conservation and exclude them. So that is the one thing that countries in the global north, in as much as they're funding most of this government in terms of environmental conservation. So again, it's up to us as African civil society organizations to stand up and protect. That is why we think of people-centered solutions. Yes, we stand for the environment, but I believe that the people who live in those environments, most of the indigenous people, are by themselves part of the environment. So that being said, I think it's just the differences in terms of conservation. So for the government, they need to understand that you cannot just come up with a foreign policy or ideologies and implement them here. They need to sit with the people. We need to, even before these evictions, we need to sensitize the people, talk about, they need to understand the different ways in which indigenous and local people, those who live in the forest, those who live in the coastal areas where the mangroves are, the government needs to engage them, understand the different conservation methods they're using. So at the end of the day, the most important thing I feel is always have a conversation with someone, whether it's in the name of public participation, whether it's in the name of stakeholders engagement, but the government ought to have conversation with the most affected persons, because at the end of the day, these indigenous and local people are the ones most affected by climate. And it's not even us who live within the cities, because some way we have found ways to adapt. We can have the resources, but someone living in the coastal region, when it floods, then he's at risk. And the same is with the indigenous and local communities in northern Kenya and in the different forested areas. So I definitely think that it's time for the different CSOs, including the CBOs, the different groups, to sort of stand up and just for what they believe in, and stand for the rights of the different communities. So it's not an issue of what the government is coming to do based on research from different nations, but how the government is engaging communities and coming up with a solution, a local solution to climate issues.
I mean, fantastic. It's great to hear the drive you still have, and you keep doing what you're doing to protect our indigenous communities. We need them. They've brought us this far. I mean, and that's amazing. So, Nyagodie, there has been so most recently there's been a very interesting ruling from the ECOP. I know this is not something that we can explore further into this, but I can only imagine a simulation of the same being carried out within a Moot court. What would you say about all that here?
So we can't speak much about the ECOP ruling that was hot off the press, just happened yesterday, because with our partners, we intend to file an appeal to what we think is an unfortunate judgment. But what's clear to us in the partners that we work with in this space is that just the way Dale was talking about the need for us to redefine for ourselves what conservation is and what it looks like, I think it's also really important for us as Africans to redefine what development is. When you think that in Kenya, just 10, 15 years ago, the government of the day wanted to erase Karura forest in the name of development, right? And put up some very, very expensive high-rises in Karura. In the name of development, we're going to put up a 60-story building above ground, and I don't know how many levels below ground in Uhuru Park, because that was what would make us look like, the London or New York or Berlin metropolises of the world. That in the name of development, we put up the Nairobi Expressway, where we felled thousands of trees in order to make space for individual cars to be driving through without consideration for the citizens of Nairobi who are looking for affordable and clean public transport, looking for green spaces across the city. So I think what's important for us is to continue really rigorously interrogating what does development mean for us. And And we do not have to copy the ways that other countries have followed in the past, and relied so heavily on fossil fuel driven development, and that really allowed the the drive of capital accumulation and wealth to supersede the interests of communities and the humanity. It's hard to imagine what we would have been like in Nairobi during the COVID time if we did not have a Karura for us to go to, if there wasn't Uhuru Park for us to go to. And so those are the questions that we need, I think, as Kenyans and as Africans, to really think ahead in terms of what is it that is, how do we define our quality of life, and how do we want to invest our wealth into creating that kind of the kind of life and pursue the livelihoods that are truly meaningful and matter to us.
I mean, it's exciting to hear that we still have a long way to go in terms of relearning and learning about all these concepts that keep coming up. And just to think of it, we only have 7 more years to get to 2030, where we, all policy entities, promise that we will not leave anybody behind. Do you think we will achieve our goal by 2030?
Well, if we don't achieve it, we have Agenda 2063. But just to comment, Africa needs to rethink, like Senior said, on this aspect of brick development. Because brick development has a way of mutilating the environment in view of us realizing the West component of what they perceive to be development. Africa, as was and as is, always believe in conservation of environment and conservation of whatever we have, as natural as they may come. But the West tend to, of course, we accept that much technology, advancement of technology can only impact meaningfully Africans if it conserves what was traditionally the way of our lives. For example, there's this issue of preserving and conserving the rights of the indigenous communities. Well, few European countries, or maybe in Scandinavian nations, that there exist indigenous groups. They exist there. But in Africa, we have a lot of them. They are part of us. To the extent that they are attached to the geographical, they have attachment to their geographical localities, and even their cultural are different, political institutions are different to the normal way of life. We need to respect just that. That's why we have the African Charter of Human Rights, which has accepted them, and other international treaties do not recognize them expressly. In our country, Article 260, whereas the Constitution does not expressly define who they are mentioned in our Constitution. So there's the need for Africans to accept their traditional way of life, because that is what defines and distinguishes from maybe the West, and we need to live by just that, such that whereas we accept the brick development and any other technological advancement in the West, we need to see that which do not resonate with who we are. And we have to be bold while doing that. And I hope we realize our Vision 2030, and if we don't, there's Agenda 2063. Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Just back to you, Dale. What do you think about the extent of ownership towards environmental justice, towards our communities and ourselves? Are we doing enough? Are there avenues for us to do more, to build on your efforts thus far?
Yes, I'll again relate it to the Constitution. So the Constitution imposes great obligation on the government to protect the environment. And again, it just comes up with one sabbatical to sort of say a person, an individual has a duty to cooperate with the government in terms of seeing through the obligations of the state. So what I'm trying to say is our environment is a collective resource. And the one person with the power to sort of protect and preserve it is the government. And that can be done through the different laws, can be done through the different bills, name it. So I think from where we stand, as organizations, as individuals, the person we need to push the most in terms of dealing with environmental issues and environmental justice is usually the government, because they are the custodians of the different laws. So for instance, we have NEMA, who's supposed to issue license, who's supposed to oversee matters environmental compliance. So it's not just our role as an organization, but I think as individuals, many people live in Nairobi without actually knowing what the different laws state. And that is why, as natural justice, the first thing we usually come and try to do is to empower the people. And as Nyagudi said it, empowerment, we talk about just knowing the law, understanding the law, shaping the law. That is how now you can use the law. So from where I sit, for us to be able to collectively fight for this, it needs an individual responsibility. And individual responsibility will only come in, or rather kick in, if you know what you're fighting for, if you know the law. And that is why across the different areas we work in, specifically in northern Kenya and the frontier counties, we do what we call legal empowerment. And we do it there because those are some of the areas where the government usually thinks it has a soft landing. It can usually come in and violate rights. It can usually come in and have projects without proper compliance. But so that is what we do with the hope that even if we leave, when the communities understand the law, they can be able to use it and challenge and realize what we ultimately call environmental justice. So in a nutshell, it's the government has the responsibility. But then as individuals, we need to push the government. So it's not just the work of different civil society organizations, but myself, yourself. Let us understand the law. Let us know when and how we can push the government, and ultimately we can realize what we call environmental justice.
Fantastic. There's a lot ahead of us. We can see more moot courts coming up, because we need more empowered lawyers. We need them to go to the communities. We need them to be our foot soldiers. We need them to some extent, even support the government initiatives, and in a way to also keep them accountable. So just to wrap up this conversation, I know it's gotten so exciting, I barely even looked at the time. Would you like to have a last word, just to reflect on some of the things we've touched on, and maybe additional points that we might have missed on? May I start with you, Nyagodi?
Sure. Yeah, no, this has been a great conversation, Rehema, so thank you for leading it and guiding us. I think I want to go back to where we started with the moot courts, right? Because I'm really hoping, like we were saying, that both the students who participated this year and students who are thinking about this down the road, what I want to do is I want to encourage every single law student to take advantage of a moot court opportunity. Of course, we want everybody to consider the Natural Justice's EJ moot court. But I think what's really important for us to recall is that regardless of where you might end up in the world, whether you actually practice law or not, or what kind of law that you might be practicing, is that the moot court allows you to, first of all, build these skills that we're talking about, which are vital regardless of where you might end up. But also, in these different subject matter moot courts, you actually are exposed to some of the issues that are really the cutting edge that are facing that particular subject area. So that we were saying for us, the environmental justice moot court questions that we develop, those are very current. They're of right now and of tomorrow. We don't necessarily know the answers to the questions we ask the students to consider. And then thirdly, what these opportunities like the EJ Moot Court does for us is that it helps us as citizens of this country, and Dale was saying this earlier, think about our responsibilities to this country. The Constitution says that each of us has a responsibility to help protect the environment. This does not belong to an individual. We can name names of, oh, if only that person were to do something. We can think about institutions and say, where is that institution? But this responsibility belongs to all of us. And so what thinking about EJ does as students, as practicing lawyers who support the moot courts, is it allows us to engage both directly and indirectly with some of the most important cutting-edge issues of our time, and to take responsibility to make this world, our world, a better place for us today and in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Elias?
Well, there's a saying within the legal circles. No, it's not actually a saying. It's an unwritten rule that after seniors have spoken, juniors always have nothing useful to add.
Apologies, I didn't follow any protocol.
You just leave us it afterwards.
So, whereas I might not have nothing useful to add, for the sake of CMR Africa, let me challenge all students watching, like Senior said, take all the chances that come before you. There will be natural environmental justice moot court competition. I hope natural justice will have one next year. Take up the opportunity because it comes with a lot of benefits. It comes, like, for example, the last competition they didn't mention. The best performed students were given internship opportunities with natural justice. The CMR Africa will roll out its calendar. Take one or two competition, you never know. That could be the avenue for you within the profession, and it could open the doors that you've always been looking for. Otherwise, I thank you, Rehema, for hosting us, and we're looking forward to other engagement.
Okay, thank you very much. Dale?
Yes, I think one of those things someone might be wondering is why spend a lot of resources on university students who are not yet advocates, because most of the work we do as natural justice, we work mainly with advocates, and that is why we even have what we call a lawyers network, where we just tap into the different lawyers to help us out, because as an organization we are limited in terms of the number of lawyers we have. So we usually reach out to different lawyers. However, one thing that we noticed as an organization is that most of us are not trained into climate litigation, and that is what we seek to do, because it's a matter of 1 or 2 years before the same students become advocates. So as we say, train them early, train them young. So if they can be able to understand that these are some of those issues and also broaden their scope. I think when I was in the university, almost everyone thought about the traditional litigation, going to court, going to a law firm, but then we're trying to open this world of endless possibility. So on my end, ever since I joined natural justice, I've been exposed to a lot. And I think, as my director mentioned, even yesterday we are the East African Court working on very technical things. So that is what, as natural justice, we'd like to expose student to. And it's also important to mention that most of us at natural justice, we got there through moot court competition. I think almost 70% got to natural justice as legal fellows after winning different moot court competitions.
How many did you win?
Personally, I own a number. It's been years. It's been years. So even if you don't win, just understanding
You were not in that
that
clique of
there
those
is-
people.
No. I was ahead, slightly ahead. Yes, so my parting shot would be to the students, there's a world of endless possibilities, and the moot court is just one avenue that you can use to sort of, it's just a window to catch a glimpse of a world of endless possibilities. And I'm certain that we're going to have another edition, and we'd like to tell the students, prepare, come in, let's get as creative as we can, and let us grow together in this particular moot court competition. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for this very engaging session. It will be fantastic to see future topics that are approaching these issues even from a nexus approach. What are the interlinkages between the demands of climate finance vis-a-vis the climate justice that needs to be addressed towards various types of stakeholders. And I look forward to also joining you guys, your team, into building the future capacity that is required on the continent, especially within sub-Sahara. It is needed. The gap is there, even within our African governments. We need to continue empowering our policymakers. We need to continue empowering our young lawyers. We need to continue encouraging our young students to take interest in these activities. And at the end of the day, it is us to accompany the sole responsibility that has been communicated here by our esteemed guests, that government is the sole responsibility for all this work. And thank you very much. I'll see you soon in the next podcast and wish you a fantastic day. Thank you.